Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Sports Betting Truth. This is the weekly college football video. I do have the college football picks coming this week, so let's do that first just to get that out of the way because I know that's why a lot of people watch. So, without any further ado, let's recap last week just real quick. And so, last week was week 7 of the model. Keyless, nothing really encouraging except the penny. Like I said, the penny has really been a strong metric this year. Even though, like I always point out every week, it has the worst standard error, it's good at predicting. Also on money lines, the nickel continues to really be the bellwether for money lines like it has all year. So nothing has really changed. So when we look at season-to-date results, the quarter is still leading the way as the only profitable keyless metric. So when we come over here, the quarter also has the best standard error. Penny has the worst, but like I said, it's not always about standard error. So when we look at this week's keys, these are going to be the spread keys, ATM, penny, nickel. And when I come over here to the report builder, I will show you how it's done through 7 weeks. So it's going to be ATM greater than 0, penny greater than 19.49, and nickel greater than 2.59. It's plus 12 units on the season. Not bad. And then for money lines, it's nickel, dime, quarter. As long as it's a 300 favorite or better. Oops. So we got, just make sure I got that. So nickel greater than 0.2596, dime greater than 0.0823, and quarter greater than 0. That has been plus 13.62 units on the year. Those are going to be our keys this week. All right. So when so let's go ahead and run this week's plays. Let me open the file and I'll switch back over to the college football model. All right, the file is open. So before I do that, I just want to recap last week's results. 2-0 against the spread. I do all this on a 4K screen, and then I have my laptop at 1080p just for the stream purposes, so I apologize for the zoom out. But yeah, 2-0 against the spread, and both of those covered very easily, and then 1 and 2 money lines. Overall, 0.77 units of profit, so on the season I'm minus 0.93. Unlike other YouTube, sports betting YouTube people, I am not afraid to admit I am down on the year, unlike the others who claim they're up a million units and never lose. All right. So let's go ahead and look at what we got this week. We got any good games? Let's see. Notre Dame and North Carolina might be good. We got a lot of rivalry games. So there's one. We have TCU and Kansas. That's going to be an awesome. No, I'm joking. Let's see. Gosh. Penn State and Michigan, it's the toilet bowl. Like, imagine saying that a month ago. Oklahoma and West Virginia could be a good game. I'm really impressed with West Virginia defensively. They just, like TCU, they have a very bad offense. Kent State and Buffalo might be the MAC game of the year. San Jose State, I'm interested to see how they can do for their first, they're probably going to be their biggest test of the year, but they've started out very strong. See, Auburn and Alabama is what it is, but it should be a blowout. LSU and Texas A&M, we'll have to wait and see. Texas A&M, caught a break not having to play on the road at Tennessee. Egg Bowl. So even though it's rivalry week, there's really not a lot of matchups that stand out. So let's go and see what the plays are this week. All right, so we have more plays than last week. We got Air Force again. Eastern Michigan, SMU, Wisconsin, Virginia, and Oklahoma State on the spread. And then on the money line, we have Southern Miss, Eastern Michigan, Penn State, Akron, Florida Atlantic, Mississippi State, and Boston College. So I'm going to go ahead and do 0.66 for these plays. And there we go. Our total units risked is done. It's a lot easier to do with a mouse. So about 9.5 units risk this week. So just going through some of the matchups, anything stick out to us here? All right, I'm interested in this one. We have the model has it at Notre Dame by about 4, so that's right in line with what the spread is. So that might be one of the best games of the week. I think it's ABC's game of the week. Band is on the field game, has Cal by about 2.5, so right in line with the spread. Civil War has Oregon by 16, but they did not look great against UCLA last week, so we'll have to wait and see. This is going to be a good game right here. My model has Texas by about 5. Sounds about right. I do think Texas will win this game. Nebraska, they're terrible this year, aren't they? Liberty, man, where would they be in their rankings tonight if they had beaten NC State? A lot of body bag games in the SEC this week. Clemson, they need to really win. They need to make a statement in this game. They do. And my model has it by about 25.5, so a little bit of value for Clemson. Northwestern, can they keep it rolling? Wow, so the toilet bowl of the week has Penn State by about 1. So there's some value there on Penn State. But I call this the give-up bowl. Like, both teams have seemed to have given up on the season, and they're playing like it. This is going to be an interesting matchup. So my model has it by about 8 for Oklahoma, so value on West Virginia. And I really would like playing West Virginia there. Maryland and Indiana. Indiana is just going to keep rolling, I think. I don't think they'll lose again. This is a pretty good game in the MAC, and my model has Buffalo by about 9.5. I think Buffalo is the team of destiny there. San Jose State has Boise State by 15, so if you're a believer in San Jose State, this might not be the week for you. USC by 17.5 there, and the spread's only 13, so keep that in mind. Auburn, Alabama. So it has Alabama by 20. Spread is 24.5, so if you like Auburn, there you go. But the penny is not in their favor. LSU, Texas A&M has A&M by about 8, so a lot of value on LSU there. Egg Bowl has Ole Miss by 5. Mississippi State is the value play, and I'm pretty sure I'm playing them on the model, I think. To go back and check. But that should be it. Yep. So just recapping. Air Force, Eastern Michigan, SMU, Wisconsin, Virginia, Oklahoma State. And then Southern Miss, Eastern Michigan, Penn State, Akron, Florida Atlantic, Mississippi State. There's the money line play. And Boston College. So those are the plays this week. All right, so that does it for the plays portion of the broadcast. So let's go ahead and talk about the topic of the broadcast, and that's why this college football season sucks. So I'm going to preface this by saying I'm a huge college football fan. I cannot remember the last year I didn't revolve my Saturdays during college football around college football season around college football. I mean, gosh, at least since I was probably 15 years old, probably earlier than that, because, my dad used to take me to TCU games, but I used to wake up and just sit on the couch, start to finish, watching college football. I've done that for years. And, even when I was working, a job that required me to work on the weekends, I would ask those Saturdays off, and just stay home and watch college football all day. I would cook, and if I wasn't cooking, I'd be in Las Vegas. I could count on one hand the number of college football Saturdays I wasn't doing that. And I just got to say, this college football season has been a massive disappointment. It really has. I really advocated for playing college football in the offseason. I was pushing very heavily for it. I did not want the season to be canceled. I thought it was stupid when the Big Ten and Pac-12 decided not to play. And I was very, I don't know what the right word would be. I don't know if I was overjoyed, but I was satisfied when the SEC, ACC, and Big 12 decided to play. Because, I've said this from day one since March Madness got canceled. I see no reason to cancel anything, postpone anything, limit the crowd size of anything. I'm a full advocate for normal sports seasons with full-size crowds. And I have not budged on that. And as we've gotten more and more data pertaining to COVID and the level of risk it presents to college athletes, I'm probably even more firm in that. And so, this season has been a massive disappointment to the point where I really don't care. This past Saturday, I only watched one game, and I was watching it on my phone. It's not like I was sitting on the couch watching it. I decided to spend the day with my family doing other things. And I only peeked into the Cincinnati UCF game on my phone when we were at a restaurant. I would never have done such a thing in the past on a Saturday during college football season. And the thing is, that's not the first Saturday I've done that this year. That's actually been most Saturdays this year. I'll watch TCU play, but outside of that, I'm like, they're making it very hard for someone to care about the college football season this year. They are. They're making it hard to care. And I'm a diehard fan. I'm a very loyal, dedicated college football fan. And if you're losing someone like me, I would imagine the casual viewer is probably even more tuned off. It's just, like I said, they've made it very hard to care. And I think the biggest reason of that being college football is less about the product on the field and more about the things surrounding the game. And by that I mean professional sports, it's all about the competition, the product on the field, which is why the NFL really doesn't feel that much different. You watch the NFL, it doesn't feel that much different, even though there's not a lot of people in the stands for the games. Because it's always been about the product on the field. College football, on the other hand, and this also extends to college basketball, it's more about the pageantry and the traditions and the atmosphere and the passion. All of that is gone. And when you take all of that away, it's just hard to get invested. It is. I always circle back to wrestling because I'm a wrestling fan. I love WWE. And I can tell you, like, from about 2016 to 2019 and all the way up to COVID, I could probably count on one hand the number of times I missed a SmackDown or Raw. I was a loyal watcher every week, both episodes. But the thing about wrestling is that the crowd is just as important as what's going on in the ring. It's just as important as the storylines. The crowd is what makes wrestling because the wrestlers feed off the crowd and the crowd feeds off the wrestlers. It's a symbiotic relationship. Without the crowd, and no, the Thunderdome, what WWE is doing is not a crowd. I'm sorry, it's not. I am not very high on this whole virtual fan or cardboard cutout garbage. But without a crowd, wrestling just isn't the same, and I have had a hard time watching it like I usually do. I'll watch the pay-per-views, but it's not the same. It's hard to get invested because the crowd is an important element, and it's the same with college football. The crowd, the atmosphere, the passion, the pageantry, the traditions, just as important as the product on the field. The sum of the whole is what makes college football. All those things, not just the product on the field. With all that missing, it just feels watered down and I don't know, stale is the right word, but it just doesn't seem, it's just not as fun. It's hard to invest. I remember the last TCU football game I attended as a fan was on November 5th, 2005. I was 17 years old. I was a senior in high school. I had just played my last high school football game the night before, and I went to the TCU football game against Colorado State on November 5th, 2005. And I remember when I was driving up to the game with my dad, seeing all the tailgates and just everybody coming together to go to that game. And this was before TCU football really exploded. I mean, there might have been 30,000 people at that game, not even 75% full. But I just remember looking around, I was like, this is great. This is what it's all about. Like, everybody just coming together for this game, the whole community, the whole school, everybody, the band, the cheerleaders, the alumni, all of that, like, all coming together. And, it's all missing. None of that's there. And it's just like, what's the point, Now, there's still a point for the players and everything, but from a fan's perspective, it's just not fun. And the biggest problem, in my opinion, what we weren't told when they were talking about having a college football season, is that we never expected them to completely overreact to positive COVID tests, or not even positive COVID tests, but just COVID issues. Same with baseball. When baseball said they were going to play, they were like, we have expanded rosters and taxi squads and all that. So the obvious assumption would be if one player tests positive, okay, they'll be quarantined and then they'll just replace them with somebody else and they'll keep playing. That's not what happened in baseball. Remember the Cardinals and the Marlins and the other teams this past year in baseball that completely shut down for weeks because of 1 or 2 or 3 positive tests? What was the whole point of those taxi squads and expanded rosters if they're just going to overreact? And that's exactly what's happening in college football. We're having programs completely shut down with 0 positive tests because of COVID issues surrounding the university, not even positive tests within the program. Complete overreactions, and I think that's a major problem. We're having games canceled to the point where you're surprised if a game is played at all because of not even COVID positive tests, but just contact tracing and COVID issues around campus. What's the deal? Like this Clemson-Florida State game being canceled this past Saturday was a joke. Even if the Clemson player was positive and symptomatic, just go quarantining him. As long as everyone else is testing negative, who cares? What's the point of testing all the players if you're just going to cancel for 1 positive test? If there's 1 positive test and everyone else is negative, that means it hasn't spread. So then you can test them the next day, and maybe if it did spread, you can catch them the next day. But the overreaction is ridiculous. And it really ruins the flow of the season, of what they're trying to make of the season. They're trying to salvage it, and I'm sorry, it's just hard. It's ridiculous. It's like, okay, that's not what we were expecting going into the year. We thought that teams could have, 6, 12 positive tests, and those players would be separated from the non-infected players, right? It's as if they're assuming that even though these players are testing negative and they're quarantining the positive guys, that somehow the virus will still get to the negative players anyway. I'm just tired of the overreactions, and no doubt that's what's going to happen in college basketball. No doubt. A student on campus tested positive. We better shut down the whole program, even though that student is an online student and has only come to campus to pay a bill for their tuition. But we're going to shut everything down anyway. It's just ridiculous, And I think there's somebody on the live stream this past Sunday who's chiming in and saying that everything I'm saying is like right-wing conspiracy. No, it's not. What's going on is that they're taking away things that we enjoy. This virus is taking away things that we enjoy. And we have to ask ourselves, is the response that some of these programs and sports organizations are making to this virus proportional to the level of risk that it exposes to these players? I said this on the last live stream. I'm going to say it again. Think of every high school football player and college football player and pro football player out there in this country. Hundreds of thousands of them, no doubt. How many of them have been hospitalized? You think if a football player at any level was hospitalized for COVID, you think we would hear about that on the news networks and ESPN? We sure as hell would. But we haven't. You know why? Because it hasn't happened. These young athletes are at 0 risk from any complications from COVID. And I know what people are going to say. They're going to be like, oh, but you can have lung damage. Like, all of that is just speculation at this point. Like, if you're going to say, oh, we can't let them play because of, lung damage or any long-term lingering effects from COVID, I mean, you could apply that to everything. It's not just COVID related. You can have long-term effects from any communicable disease. Are we going to shut down for that too? So it just poses 0 risk to these players. And I know the next logical leap is, yeah, but the staff, there's a lot of staff, coaches and, medical trainers and everything on the team that are at risk because they're older. And I'm like, still, okay, if you're really that afraid, if you're a staff member who's at risk, then, you're going to have to make a decision. Is the paycheck worth exposing yourself? Risk versus reward. And that's where I go. I think it's all about personal responsibility, and that's how it always should be. But this virus is really destroying things that we enjoy, things that we use to escape from, day-to-day life. And if they're going to ruin sports, then where else do we have to turn, Video games, I guess, TV, but sports is something that many people, including myself, have a passion for, and it's being ruined. And, it's gotten to the point where, like, okay, at what point do we just say enough and try to save the sports that we love and stop overreacting? And just, get back to normal. Who's going to be the first governor out there that lets stadiums have full capacity? Who's going to be the first who's going to be the first athletic director out there that allows full capacity at their stadiums, or sports team owner or sports organization? I feel like it's going to be a giant game of hot potato. Nobody's going to want to do it first. Nobody's going to want to do it first, which is why my prediction on who the first sports commissioner is going to be that allows a full crowd at any sporting event, I think it's going to be Vince McMahon at WWE for WrestleMania. Maybe Royal Rumble, maybe, but I think definitely WrestleMania. And I think once Vince McMahon does it, others will be, feel, other governors and commissioners and everything and athletic directors can then feel safe to, so, okay, we're going to do it too. But someone's going to have to take that first step. And I think it's going to be Vince McMahon. But geez, like college football Saturdays, one of my favorite things, I love falls because of Saturdays of college football, just sitting on the couch from 9 a.m. all the way up to, way up past midnight for that last Pac-12 or Hawaii game, just watching football, eating, just being lazy, enjoying myself. That has been taken away from me this year, and it sucks. It sucks. And the product that they're putting out right now is just totally watered down, and I'm sorry, I'm not invested in it at all. Even though I'm betting on this games, I still don't really care that much. I was checking the scores every now and then, but usually the games I bet on, I watch them, and I have multiple TVs set up and I'm watching them. I couldn't even really care about that. I was never a big ESPN College Game Day watcher in the morning. Sometimes I'll have it on as background noise, but the main reason I never really liked it is because you want to get hyped up for college football games for the day, but they had too many sob stories and like emotional tearjerkers. I don't want to watch that. But anyway, like it's pathetic what they're trying to do with that show, with this whole virtual fans and virtual signs and I'm sorry. Stop. Whether it be a sports organization or a broadcast network or anything, stop trying to make virtual audience or virtual fans happen. Stop. It's not the same. It's stupid. It's silly. Stop trying to make it happen. Just like with the cardboard cutouts, I got an email from Kansas Athletics. Ooh, $62 to have a cardboard cutout for you in Allen Fieldhouse. Who the hell would waste $62 on something like that? Oh, I have a piece of cardboard of myself in Allen Fieldhouse that nobody's going to see. Why would anyone pay $62 for it? Like, they're trying so hard to make these virtual fans and virtual audiences happen, and it's pathetic. It's lame. That's the best way to describe it. It's lame. It's lame. It doesn't replace the real thing. So I'm going to conclude this segment by saying what I've been saying all along. This is how it should be. If you are not afraid of getting COVID and are willing to accept the risks of exposing yourself to COVID or getting it, you should be perfectly allowed to go to a sporting event. You should. If you are afraid of getting COVID, or if you are afraid of passing COVID to someone that is at risk, or you just don't want to expose yourself, then don't go. Stay home. Take personal measures to ensure your own sake, health for your own sake and the sake of your loved ones. Take your own measures, personal responsibility. That's how it always should be. Instead of mass mandating everybody follow the same script. That's how I feel. And that's where I will end the segment. But yeah, this season has just been a beating, and I don't know if I would say I just want it to be over with, but you can't salvage it at this point. It's a total crap show, and I want to talk about the college football playoff rankings. I want to talk about the college football playoff rankings that just came out. You know, I have been paying attention enough to where I feel like I can give a good take on these college football rankings, right? All right. Just need the... All right, so obviously, no surprise, Alabama is number 1. And then we have Notre Dame at number 2. So here's where the controversy begins. Clemson at number 3 at 7-1. So I know what people are going to say. They're going to be like, yeah, they lost and they didn't have Trevor Lawrence for 2 games. And that's fair. If they did have Trevor Lawrence, they'd probably be 8-0, right? And then you have Ohio State only having played 4 games at number 4, Texas A&M, whose only losses to the number 1 team, Florida, whose only losses to the team above them, Texas A&M. And then you have Cincinnati at 8-0 at number 7. Northwestern is surprised at number 8. Georgia, who is at 5-2 at number 9. I do not think they should be 9. And then rounding out the top 10 is Miami at 7-1, whose only loss is Clemson. So here, and then another team of note is BYU, who has basically played a Sun Belt schedule at number 14. So here's my problem with the college football playoff rankings this year, and I said this was going to be a problem before the season even started, and that is the lack of non-conference games makes it basically impossible to come up with a strength of schedule ranking because every team is playing in their own self-contained environment. The SEC didn't even play any non-conference games, and neither did the Big Ten. And then you had the Big 12 and the ACC only play 1 non-conference games, but pretty much all of them were body bag games. And then you had conferences like the AAC. They played some non-conference games, but those are mostly against like Sun Belt teams and FCS teams. So the issue is when you have so many teams that didn't even play any non-conference games, how can you measure conference strength? You measure the strength of conferences by how they performed in non-conference. Without any non-conference games, that is impossible. If only SEC teams are playing SEC teams and only Big Ten teams are playing Big Ten teams, then how can you know which conference is better when they don't have any outside of the conference games? How are you supposed to measure? It's all in the same self-contained ecosystem. You can't. It's impossible. So all these college football playoff committee guys who are like, Alabama's played a better schedule, how do you know? How can you measure that the SEC is better than any other league this year? Yeah, you can use the past, but the past is the past. That's not this year. Yes, you can use recruiting rankings, but those are all subjective anyway. How can you mathematically prove that the SEC is the best conference this year? I think Alabama's number 1, and I do think that the SEC is probably the best conference, but there's no way to mathematically prove it like you can in the past by using non-conference performance. So you have a team like Cincinnati who's 8-0. They've only played an AAC schedule, and I think their non-conference game was against Alabama A&M or Austin Peay or something like that. So they didn't play any non-conference games of note, but how do we know the AAC is bad? How do we know? Cincinnati's at 7, even though they're 8-0. How can you mathematically determine the AAC is a bad conference to where their undefeated team at the top is at 7? There's no way to know. So that's why I think these college football playoff rankings are stupid, because there's no way to measure the value of a win when no team played a non-conference schedule. They're just assuming. They're assuming that the SEC is the best. They're assuming that the Big Ten is still strong. They're assuming that the AAC is bad. And poor Coastal Carolina at 9-0. How do they know the Sun Belt is bad? Okay, I'll give them the fact that the Sun Belt has played a lot of out-of-conference games compared to other leagues and lost a lot of them. Like, it seems like half the Sun Belt has gotten beat by BYU. So I can give them that with the Sun Belt, but how do we know the AAC is bad? It's absolutely ridiculous. Like, why is Georgia with 2 losses? Why are they at number 9 ahead of 1-loss teams like Indiana or Miami? When you look at Georgia's resume, they've lost to the 2 best teams they've played. Right? They lost to Alabama and Florida, and neither one of those games are really that close. So for them to still be number 9, they obviously have to have some big win in there, right? And I use big wins subjectively because without any non-conference games to measure the strength of the SEC, we don't know if the SEC is any good. So I'm trying to look up Georgia's schedule right now. They've won 5 games. Arkansas, Auburn, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Mississippi State. So out of all those games, only Auburn is worth a crap. And what is Auburn ranked? 22. All right? So why are they ahead of Indiana? Why? Indiana lost to the number 4 team by a touchdown. Georgia lost to the number 6 team by 17 points, and they lost to the number 1 team by 18. Why are they ahead of Indiana? I'm just not a fan of if there is any year to have automatic bids and go to an FCS-style playoff, this year would be it, because it is impossible to pick 4 teams out of 127 with the current setup. No non-conference games to compare conference strength. Unbalanced schedules, a bunch of games being canceled. Teams like BYU out there who had pretty much like create a schedule on the fly, which I don't hold their schedule completely against them. Even though it is a Sunbelt schedule, it's not their fault because they pretty much had to scratch together one at the last minute. But if there was ever a year to say to hell with it and just go to an FCS-style playoff with automatic bids and at-large teams, like a 16-team playoff, this would be the year to do it because it is impossible to pick 4 teams out of 127. It is. You can't do it. You can't. I don't envy the committee at all. They're being tasked with something impossible. I've always been opposed to a 4-team playoff, by the way. It should always be 8 minimum, but I've always been an advocate for the FCS-style 16-team playoff. Automatic bids to the conference champ and then at large. That's how it should be because that's the most fair way to do it. Everything else is subjective. You know why? Because even when teams play 3 or 4 non-conference games, even when that happens, that's still not a big enough sample size to pick the 4 best teams out of 130. You need a bigger non-conference sample than that to definitively decide who the 4 best teams out of 130 are when they only play 3 or 4 non-conference games and 12 or 13 games total. It's impossible to pick the best 4 with that criteria. The subjectivity needs to go. At least in college basketball, people say the 68-team tournament waters it down, but at least every team has a path, and if you don't get in, you can only blame yourself. If you wanted to get in, you should have won your conference, right? I don't think a 16-team playoff would water things down at all because there's 10 conferences, right? So 10 automatic bids. So if you don't win your conference, you better have had a good enough season to be one of the 6 best remaining teams. Right? It's not like you're going to have a 6-6 team in there with a 6-team playoff. You might get that with the lower automatic bids out of the Sun Belt, but as far as major conferences are concerned, I would be very surprised if there was a scenario out there where a 3-loss team was one of the 6 at-large teams. I would. I mean, let's just look at last year. Like, let's say that there's a 16-team playoff last year where there are automatic bids that would have been LSU, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Oregon, Memphis, Clemson, Boise State, Appalachian State, Florida Atlantic, and Miami of Ohio. Those would have been your 10 automatic bids. And then you would have had to hope that you were one of the 6 best teams to get in after that, as a non-champion. It would be crowded. Man, my browser goes so slow when I'm streaming. All right, so the best non-champs would have been Alabama. They probably would have gotten in. Wisconsin, maybe. They had 3 losses. I don't know. Alabama for sure would have got in. Georgia probably would have gotten in for sure. Penn State probably would have got in. I think Notre Dame would have got in. So there's 4 already, and these are all 2-loss teams. I mean, going down the line, I mean, Florida probably would have got in, and then it would have been a foot race for that last bid. It probably would have been, I don't know, it could have been like Wisconsin. It could have been, I don't think Utah would have got in after the Big Ten championship game. It probably would have been Wisconsin. So yeah, Wisconsin would be the only team with 3 losses in there. That's not a watered down playoff. That's not. I mean, all those teams had 2 losses and at least 10 wins. The worst conference champion in there would have been Miami of Ohio, and they were 8-5. But that's the nature of automatic bids. It happens in college basketball too. That's not watered down, people. That's how it should be. And I know I'm one voice, but at least expand it to 8. I'm tired of the subjectivity. I am. Because there's going to be a day that comes when either every conference champion has 1 loss or every conference champion is undefeated. And then what do you do with 4 teams? No more subjectivity. What coach gets fired first? Will Muschamp already got fired, so I think it pains me to say it because he was my old offensive coordinator, but I don't see Justin Fuente surviving at Virginia Tech. Not after you lose to Pittsburgh at home by 34. And selfishly, I kind of hope that he can be hired back as offensive coordinator at TCU. Yeah. I mean, wrestling is real in terms of like what they do is real. The outcomes are not real, but it takes a lot of skill to do what they do. Jimmy Touchdown, I'd like to hear more about the daily fantasy experience with COVID in NFL. That would be interesting to hear. I agree, Lennon and Tweed, I feel like a lot of what we're seeing is all about optics. I feel like these conferences and teams are terrified of being that team that makes things worse. They kind of did the bait and switch on us with baseball and college football. They gave us the whole taxi squads and expanded rosters and all of that. But they're not actually following it. They're shutting everything down with 1 positive test, or in some cases, no positive test, but just COVID issues surrounding the university. They did the bait and switch on us. But yeah, you're right. It's 100% about optics. They just don't want to be the one that, contributes to a hypothetical spread. And I get it. With lawyers out there and everything, I get it. But it's just, it sucks. It's an overreaction. I think everyone's just being silly. And I just don't see where it ends. Like, if everyone's going to be so afraid to be that entity or organization that contributes to a breakout, it's never going to end unless there's like a vaccine that completely eradicates it. Like, this will never end. At some point, people are just going to have to say, you know what? Enough. This is how it's going to be. Yeah, the Ivy League was the first one to cancel college basketball, and then they canceled it again this year. I think those institutions hate sports. They hate sports. They view sports as barbaric and insulting because those Ivy League schools are all very snobby, highbrow, pencil neck types that are, academia, very, very highbrow snobs. And they view sports as beneath them. They feel like universities should be institutions of higher learning, and there's no room for things like athletics. Unless it's something snobby like rowing or polo. But yeah, the Ivy League would have canceled no matter what. Those people hate sports. And I feel like the Big Ten was very similar when they canceled football back in the summer. They're kind of the same. Like, they are insulted by sports and view sports as something outside the purview of a university. But money ultimately rules the day, and that's the difference between the Ivy League and the Big Ten, is that the Ivy League doesn't really make any money off their athletic programs like the Big Ten does. So that's what it all comes down to. Asking a political question, Zookie Man 182. What are the odds Trump gets to the Supreme Court? What would your made-up odds of that happening be? I will answer that. I think it's something will make it to the Supreme Court. I can't tell you what. I can't tell you when. I think something will make it there. I've been telling everybody this for the past 2 weeks. I think the chance of the Trump campaign succeeding in a legal challenge to overturn a state, not the election, but like a state, or prevent electoral votes going to Biden, is about 15 to 20%. That's what I'd put it at. Hospitals are overrun. I mean, my sister's a nurse in New York City, so I've really been able to learn a lot from her. Here's what she told me. Hospitals are always full. They're supposed to be full. Otherwise, the hospital's losing money. So that's a media trick that they tell us about hospitals to get us afraid, and that's how hospitals are full. The thing is, they're always full. They're always full. What the media doesn't tell us is how many patients are in the hospital taking up a bed because of COVID. Because a lot of the COVID hospitalizations being reported are something like this. Someone goes in for, say, like a surgery to take their appendix out, right? And before the surgery, they test positive for COVID. Well, they're going to be considered a COVID hospitalization, even though they are not in the hospital for COVID. So I think that's what I think that's the most important metric, and we're not getting that. How many people are in the hospital because of COVID and only because of COVID? Yeah, I agree, Jay Boak. A 16-team playoff is what we need. We really do. It makes the most sense. It's not arbitrary. It would, and I know what everyone's going to say. Oh, well, then you're just going to make the most angry team from the 5th team that was left out to the 17th team that was the first one left out. Yeah, but at least the arbitrariness is on. You have a defined path to get into the playoff, and that's win your conference. That's what I say about college basketball, the bubble teams that get left out. Oh, you were the team number 69 instead of team number 68. Well, you have no one to blame but yourself. You should have won more games. I do agree that any 16-team playoff, the first round should be at the home field of the higher seed. I do agree with that. Yeah, that's the thing, Jay Boak. I just believe that a lot of the tests are false positives, or they're too sensitive. That's something my sister has told me, is that even if there's like a small trace of COVID, you might test positive, but it takes a certain amount of viral load of COVID to really, either make you someone who could spread it or give you symptoms. And that's the thing. If you only have a small viral load of it, you're not going to spread it and it's not going to affect you. But, it's just the reason I'm ranting about COVID is not because I'm trying to go full Alex Jones here. It's because I'm mad that it's affecting things that I enjoy. It's affected my ability to enjoy sports and travel and all their kinds of things. It's affected my ability to have a life. And, we're going on 9 months of this now, and there's no end in sight. And it's like, okay, when is enough going to be enough? So, anyway, let's talk about a development today. It's not college football related, but I was, kind of preparing my college basketball model, and I just kind of got the itch. I got the itch to say, you know what? I think I want to go back to doing a Monte Carlo basketball model. So I've been working on that today. I'm starting from scratch. I'm programming it in R. But I have started work on a Monte Carlo college basketball model. I'm excited to see what happens. I don't know if I'm going to use it in conjunction with my Courage college basketball model or separate or to replace it, but it's in development. I'm hoping to have it done within 2 weeks. I made a lot of progress today. Basketball is very easy to model for. It's not like baseball where there's a lot of moving parts. And it's something I've done before, so it's not my first rodeo. I used to have a college basketball Monte Carlo model. So if I really need to, I can just look back at my old source code that was written in Microsoft Excel Visual Basic. But R can do things a lot faster, so I'm excited to see where it turns. But yeah, I was working on that today. Right now, my college basketball model is pretty much in the same mold as my college football model. It uses the same exact structure, only with different inputs, obviously, but the structure is the same. But the Monte Carlo model is just so much more fun, right? It's so much more fun. You can do a lot more with it, even non-betting related things. It can just give you better insights. And I just got the itch. Am I ever going to make my model public and sell it? No. I don't want to give away my secrets. There might be a day that comes where like, okay, this is old and I've moved on, and I might do my old models. So a Monte Carlo model is pretty much another way of saying a simulation. You like simulate a basketball game or a baseball game, and about, several times. My baseball model, I simulated a baseball game 1,500 times. And you take the averages from those 1,500 simulations to come up with your overall like mean result. And that's like, if you were to play a game 1,500 times, what would the average result be? That's a Monte Carlo model. And you can do that at basketball too. You just write a script to simulate a basketball game based on each team's stats, and you come up with like a hypothetical mean. If this basketball game was played 1,500 times, what would the average final score be? What would the average, assists be, and offensive rebounds be, and all kinds of stats in the box score be? That's what a Monte Carlo model does. A linear regression model is pretty simple. You just find various stats and create a historical database of those stats. Like my college football database goes all the way back to 2008. So that's 12 or 13 seasons of stats from the past. And then you run a regression against those stats based on this year's current stats. It's a simple, you do a regression. So, say, this is just hypothetically speaking, say you have a database of every team's, rushing yards per game, passing yards per game, and opponents' passing yards per game and opponents' rushing yards per game for the past 12 years. And you can regress based off that, and then to make predictions, you put in each team's current statistics in those areas, and you plug it into the regression equation, and it gives you a prediction. Why not give it away? Because I pretty much give my model away. Like everything I show you, all the picks I make are my model picks. And I give those away every day. I gave away my baseball picks every day. I gave away my college basketball picks every day last season. I gave away my college football picks every week. Every pick I give away, and I give them away for free, it comes from my model. It's what I play. So technically I already do. So I guess the question is, if I already do that, why would you want the source code? If I did give away the source code, it would confuse everyone. No one would know how to run it or drive it, because I pretty much programmed it for one person, me, so I'm the only one who knows how it works, And I didn't write the code to be easily readable by other people for other people to use, so it would just confuse the hell out of everybody. You might figure it out after a while, after a lot of trial and error, but yeah. Like, what I've done in my college basketball model so far is I pretty much compiled all teams' raw totals, and then I converted those into advanced raw stats. So like offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, effective field goal percentage, those offensive rebounding percentage, all those stats that you need, advanced stats. So that's where I'm at right now, and then I move on to the adjustments, the weighting. That's something that's unique to my college basketball models. I don't do it in football, I don't do it in baseball, but I do it in basketball, and that's weighting. I weight more recent games more than the earlier games. So then I go through the adjustments, the weighting, and then I'm going to program the Monte Carlo simulation. So that's where I'm at. What's the softest, easiest market I can build a model for that isn't going to get me limited? Well, I could tell you this. A lot of people ask me about player props. And yes, player prop markets are very soft. They are very soft. And probably the most beatable market there is if you can create a model to, give you predictions for player props. However, if you're successful, you're going to get limited. Books don't like you just feasting on player props because books know that those are soft markets and those are their points of weakness. So you get to a point where you're like, okay, I can keep playing player props and betting low amounts, like 25 or 50 bucks might be okay. But if you start betting 100 bucks, 150 bucks and just killing the books on player props, you're going to get limited. So that's why you have to be very careful for building a model around something like that alone. But really, the only way you can't get limited is two things. Don't bet a lot. And by a lot, I think anything under 250 are probably fine. Don't bet a lot or don't win. You'll never get limited if you don't win. But just stick to the tighter the markets, the sharper the markets, the more you can get away with betting before they limit you. Like, I don't ever foresee a book limiting anybody for NFL bets, ever. Like, even if you're betting $10,000 a game and winning, I don't think they would limit you because they know that their markets are sharp. And it probably the NBA as well. But then you get into some sports like NHL, baseball. Yeah, your limits, your betting limits are probably going to be lower as far as what you can get away with before you get limited or banned. But player props in any sport will get you limited or banned very quickly if you're doing well at them. That's why I don't spend a lot of time talking about player props on this channel, because I don't think the risk, the effort is worth, the juice is worth the squeeze. If you build a good model for it, you're just going to get limited anyway. Try to beat markets where you can bet higher, and where they have a higher tolerance for winners. And your investment, as far as time and effort is concerned, will be better protected. But as far as the easiest market to build a model for, I always say basketball, because basketball is very easy to collect stats for. It's not that complex. You don't need anything fancy to build a good basketball model, and it teaches you a lot of concepts. While building out a basketball model. And I have a video for this, by the way, that I haven't edited yet about why basketball is the best sport for your first model. But a lot of concepts that you can apply to basketball, a basketball model can carry over to other sports, specifically adjustments, Monte Carlo simulations, just learning how to program better in general. Basketball is your sport. How is the simulated Monte Carlo any different than a power rating prediction? Because you have more control, you can be more granular. You have more control over the outcome. What would be a good example? So like in a Monte Carlo model, say you're running a Monte Carlo basketball simulation and you're facing and you have a team that's very good defensively against 2-point shots, but they're not very good defensively against 3-pointers. And say they're playing a team that sucks at 2-point shots, but is very good at hitting 3-pointers. Right? That's probably something you won't be able to measure in a traditional power rating or linear regression model, because one team is playing into the other team's weakness and vice versa. That's something you can measure in a Monte Carlo model. That's something a Monte Carlo model will pick up. That's one example. And I guess here's another good example. I'm going to use football as an example, even though I have, Monte Carlo models in football are pretty hard to do. But I'm going to use our own example. TCU football, very good defense, very good defensively, but very susceptible to the big play. Oklahoma football, offensively, they are very good at the big play, but not very good at nickel and diming. So Oklahoma's offensive strength plays very well into TCU's defensive weakness. And so that's why TCU has always struggled defensively against Oklahoma in the Big 12 for the most part ever since 2015. Even though TCU usually has the best defense in the Big 12 every year, Oklahoma is usually the exception to that because Oklahoma's strength plays right into TCU's weakness. So if you're using a power rating that only takes macro defense and offense into account it's not going to be able to pick up on that disparity of Oklahoma's strength playing into TCU's weakness. It's not going to pick up on that. But with the Monte Carlo method that can measure something like a team's tendency for big plays on offense versus a team's tendency to give up big plays on defense, that's something that can be picked up on and might give you an edge. And that's the benefit of Monte Carlo. You can simulate a lot of things that can have a big enough effect on the outcome that might not be picked up in a more simpler equation. Like my baseball Monte Carlo model, I mean, I took a lot into account for the Monte Carlo run. You know, handedness and weather, all kinds of things that you could, yes, plug into a linear regression equation. You absolutely could. But with the Monte Carlo, it takes the randomness out of it and allows you to account for things you otherwise could not account for. Am I betting on college basketball tomorrow? No. I'll probably run my model. I'll probably run my model tomorrow and maybe even post the hypothetical plays on Twitter. But that's the thing. So I'm probably going to keep running my old college basketball model because I haven't decided yet. If I'm going to run it alongside the Monte Carlo one I'm building or, have my Monte Carlo replace it. The thing is, it might sound like a no-brainer to just keep running both models, but these things take a lot of effort and time to maintain, just the day-to-day operations of it and everything. And so running two models at the same time, that's going to, double the amount of time it takes to run a day-to-day model. It's not like college football where you only have to maintain it once a week. College basketball is every day. So do I have the time and desire to run two models at the same time? I don't know. But until I actually complete the Monte Carlo college basketball model, I'll keep running my old one. Or I'm not going to call it the old one. I'm going to call it the regression model. Yes, FanDuel, DraftKings, they're all going to limit you if you're very good at player props. Those are the soft markets. They will limit you. I'm sorry. I know it sucks, but player props are intended to lure you into the book. They are what they are called. They are called loss leaders. Black Friday, only a couple days away. Something I don't partake in, by the way. I'm not, I value my time too much to wait in line in the cold for hours to maybe save a couple $100 on something. My time is worth more than that. But Black Friday is a great example of what a loss leader is. A loss leader is something to get you into the store. So, for example, Best Buy is going to sell like a TV at a loss, right? And they're like, why would they do that? Why would they take a loss? Because they're hoping now that they have you in the store to buy that TV, you're going to buy all these accessories, for the TV that they're going to sell at a profit. They'll ultimately make up for the loss and then some, right? Loss leaders are intended to get you in the door, and that's exactly what player props are. They are intended to get you in the door. Now, I'm not saying that they're very easy to beat, that any idiot could beat a player prop. You still probably need a pretty good model to beat player props, but the markets are a lot softer. So if you have even a somewhat decent model, it shouldn't be very hard to beat player props. The markets are soft like that. But they exist just to get you in the door. And yes, you'll be limited. Like, don't think that these stateside books aren't going to limit you just because they're stateside. They will. People get limited at Las Vegas books. William Hill will limit you. So, no one's immune from limitation. Like I said, the best way to avoid being limited is to not bet that much or don't win. Or just stick to the markets that are sharper, where they're going to have a higher tolerance for higher bets. What bowl will you see Bearcats be in? I think it's going to be the Peach Bowl. Whatever the... usually the bowl that a G5 team would play in usually rotates between the Fiesta Bowl, the Peach Bowl, and the Cotton Bowl. Because the Rose Bowl is always going to be either the playoff or the Big Ten Pac-12. The Sugar Bowl is always going to be either the playoff or the Big 12 ACC. And the Orange Bowl is always going to be the ACC versus an at-large team. I think the only G5 team that ever played in the Orange Bowl is Northern Illinois. I don't think it's going to happen in the current setup. I don't think it can. So yeah, it rotates between the Cotton Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, and Orange Bowl, or Peach Bowl. And last year it was the Cotton Bowl. That was Memphis. And the year before it was the Fiesta Bowl with UCF. And then the year before that was the Peach Bowl with UCF. So yeah, it will be the Peach Bowl against an at-large team. You know, a lot of projections I've seen out there has them playing Florida in the Peach Bowl. So I think that'd be a pretty good matchup. I don't think... Here's the deal with Cincinnati, right? I've said this before on the stream. They remind me of my 2000... I don't know if I would say they remind me more of our 2009 or 2010 TCU team. I'd probably say 2000... I would say they're between our... That's the thing. Our 2008, 2009, and 2010 teams are all pretty good. But they kind of remind me of our TCU teams. Maybe not that good. Maybe not as good defensively. Maybe not as good offensively, but around the same. But I think they really had to beat UCF by more than what they did this past Saturday. You got to leave no doubt. If you're a G5 team and you want to get in the playoff, you have to leave no doubt, and they didn't do that. You can't win by 3. Especially, and it's not like this UCF team is like they've been in the past. They're not as good. And they fell behind 14-9 or 3 or whatever. You have to leave no doubt. That's what we did at TCU. Whenever we played a big nationally televised road game that had game day there and everything, we blew them out. In 2009, we went to BYU. Game day was there. They were ranked, 15, and we were ranked like 6, and we beat them by 30. The next year, we go to Utah. They were ranked 5. We were ranked 3. We were both undefeated. Game day was there, and we beat them by 40. Like, that's what you got to do if you want to get the playoff. They didn't do that. They left no doubt. Or they left a doubt. Especially when they have no big non-conference game to hang their hat on. But, yeah, that's just... I know it's not fair, and that's why I advocate for automatic bids in a 16-team playoff, because it's not fair at all. It's not. But the system is what it is, and you have to leave no doubt, and they didn't do that. So that's how I see it. But yeah, I think they'll play. Do I think they would beat a Florida in the Peach Bowl? Probably not. I mean, that's what that's how everyone says. That's what everyone says about those games, like G5 versus P5 in a bowl, like UCF and Auburn back in 2017, Memphis and Penn State last year. I think they could beat Florida. It all depends on how much the team cares. Like, I don't think Memphis last year is that good of a team. I don't. Penn State beating them by 14 was not really a surprise. I don't think UCF 2 years ago is that good. LSU beating them by 8, probably not a surprise. And I think Cincinnati is good, but are they great? I don't think so. Our first half and first quarter lines easier to beat? Yes, they're easier to beat if you can have a good model for that. They're softer markets, absolutely. They are softer markets. Just build a model to get them. But because they're softer markets, just remember the tolerance of winning is lower. So if you do really well on them and you're betting too much, you'll get limited. Yep. So you just got to keep that in mind. You ever think about using offshore books like Pinnacle to avoid getting limited? Of course. I'm not a fan of offshore book these days after what Five Dimes did. But yeah, I don't think, as an American, I can't sign up for Pinnacle anyway, so there's really no point, and I just don't feel like jumping through all the hoops to be able to bet on Pinnacle is worth it. On the topic of modeling specific data like the Monte Carlo, have you built a model at the player matchup level? That's what my baseball model is. My baseball model was player by player, pitcher by pitcher, batter versus pitcher matchups, Monte Carlo runs. I'm probably not going to do that. I thought about it. So when I had the idea to do my Monte Carlo college basketball model this morning, when I had the idea, I thought about it. Like, do I do a player-based model? Like, should the model be based off like individual players' stats and then use that for the model? And I was like, you know what? I feel like that's too much work. I can always go back and do that later. But I decided, no, I'm not going to do that because honestly, with 351 teams, who has the time to keep up with players who are out, players who are hurt, especially in the COVID era? Who has the time to keep up with all that, And also another thing with that is that you have to account for, players that might have sat out, players that were like ineligible for the first semester, players coming back from an injury, like all that. You would have to also model in preseason ratings for every individual player so you could plug those in for those situations. That's just too much work. I already have a successful college basketball model already. I don't need to get that granular. And besides, there's no like daily fantasy or anything for college basketball to get even more. There's no player prop markets in college basketball outside of March Madness, the later rounds of March Madness. So it's just not, the juice is not worth the squeeze to do a player-based college basketball model. Now for NBA, absolutely. I think that would be the best way to go, but not college. Gozarian Gozar, I saw your message I don't know what it said. Or I read it and then I forgot what it said. So if you want to type it again, go ahead. Do I have any experience in tennis gambling? No. I've always wanted to though, because I've heard that the markets can be pretty soft. I don't know where I would begin. The thing about building a model though is that I like building them out not just to bet with them, but because I'm a fan of the sports and I like just playing around with the statistics as well. Like when I built my first college basketball models, it was not about betting. It was more about just being able to like have fun with the stats and numbers and everything. So if I was going to do all that effort to build a tennis model, I don't know if I'd enjoy it because I watch the majors in tennis, but I'm not really a big tennis guy outside of that. So a main reason I like to build these models out and put in all the time and effort and energy is because I'm a fan of the sports and I just feel like it helps me enjoy the sport more. So that's why I don't do tennis. But I've always wanted to though, because it just seems like it would be a interesting opportunity to maybe introduce myself to a sport at a different level. But that's the thing with models is that it takes time and effort and energy to maintain them and everything. So you don't want to overextend yourself. That's another thing. You don't want to you don't want to be the jack of all trades and the master of none when it comes to models. I think it's better to pick like 2 or 3 sports to really focus on and build models for, rather than spread yourself thin and have like a model for a dozen different sports. Because like I said, college basketball, like it's a day-to-day thing. I would wake up every morning during college basketball season, including at like 8 a.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, to make sure I ran my college basketball model every day. And it was about 30 to 45 minutes of work every day to maintain it. Every day. So if you have a bunch of different models, how are you going to have the time to maintain them all? At least the luxury of a football model is you only have to maintain it once a week. When the week's over, you only have to do it once a week. But baseball, college basketball, every day. You get up, you do the same thing every day. So when you overextend yourself, you're either going to neglect your models or just not have them be very focused. Live betting. The thing with live betting is that they're just more juiced. It's just more juiced, and you have a higher bar to clear to profit on tennis, or not live betting. So if you can build a good model that can be fast enough to spit out live betting opportunities and edges, there's nothing wrong with it. I planned on it, but never got around to building out a extension of my baseball model to be able to take advantage of live betting opportunities, because that's the benefit of a Monte Carlo model, is you can just set the Monte Carlo simulation to like start at whatever part of the game is. So if you want to run a Monte Carlo simulation based on the current score with like say 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you just plug those things in and then run the simulation from there on. Create yourself a live betting opportunity. You could do it with college basketball as well. I might try with my college basketball model. But yeah, live betting, there's opportunities there, absolutely. But that's why the juice is higher as well. So that's just how it is. But I might try to code in a live betting module for my college basketball model. Absolutely. I'm thinking about doing a separate live stream pertaining to my college basketball model. Maybe I could show you guys some of the workings of it as I progress. But that's, there is live betting opportunities out there. All right, so I'm going to shift the topic to Thanksgiving. Let me get a drink of water real quick. But yeah, Thanksgiving. Before I do that, I'm going to answer JamTart22's question. On the topic of maintaining a model, can't you just automate getting the data every day and then automatically run the model? Well, that's... How do I put it? There is a level of danger of completely automating your day-to-day maintenance routine. There's a level of danger because you can miss errors, you can miss bugs, you can miss scenarios that you weren't prepared for. That was the thing in my baseball model this past year. I had it ready to go for the first day of the season on July 24th or whenever it was, but I felt like I was spending multiple hours every morning for like at least a week, if not 2, having to fix the model for things I was not prepared for. Like double headers was a big one. Like my model was not prepared for all those double headers. There's a lot of things my model wasn't prepared for that I had to like program in after the fact that I never would have caught if I fully automated the process. You want to have like a certain level of like checkpoints you want to get to that are bug free that you can monitor. But I mean, I pretty much automated as much as I could. Here's how my day, like I have a video showing you my day-to-day routine for my baseball model. It's out there on my channel if you want to look at it. But pretty much my baseball model, and this is pretty much how it works for everything else. You download the stats. I downloaded it from Baseball Save It, and then I ran the script to update the model. But it has to like calculate and run all the it has to run the scripts, the adjustments and everything, right? And that takes time, even with a fast computer. So even if you have a lot of it automated, you still have to let it run. I automated as much as I can, but ultimately, what takes the most amount of time that you cannot automate is actually placing the bets. Actually going into whatever you use to place bets and actually like looking for your game and entering the number you're going to bet, that honestly, that takes, that probably took a bulk of the time for college basketball, of the 30 to 45 minutes of daily maintenance, having to actually like determine what you're going to bet and like how much you're going to bet and then actually putting them in, that probably took about 1/3 of it right there. But you still have to let the model run and compute and compile and everything, and that just takes time no matter how much you've automated it. Yep. So anyway, I'm going to move on to Thanksgiving. Kind of off topic here, but I like to have these, I'd like to have live streams on this channel, twice a week or so. And I was thinking about making those days, either Sunday and Thursday or Monday and Thursday, Tuesday and Thursday. But obviously it's not going to happen this Thursday because it's Thanksgiving. But, being off from work and everything, I'll have a lot of free time. I'll still go visit my family and eat and everything, but I'll have a lot of free time to really get this basketball model rolling. But, I'm not a big fan of Thanksgiving. I'm thinking about doing a separate video for this altogether. But, Thanksgiving food, it doesn't really excite me that much. I'm not a big turkey guy, and stuffing is okay. I prefer oyster stuffing. Green bean casserole, it's okay. Mashed potatoes, yeah, but it doesn't really excite me that much, I like pumpkin pie, but it's not my favorite kind of pie. But yeah. Anyway, I'm not going to be doing a live stream this Thursday. I don't know when the next live stream will be on this channel. I enjoy doing them, though. And they, they make me decent revenue. So that's why I do them. That's why I've been doing more of these live streams because, I make money off of them. So why not, right? Anyway, It's 8:45. I've been out this for about an hour 15 minutes. Thinking about calling it a day. I don't know if I have anything else to say, but that's all I have for now. So I'm going to go back upstairs and I'm going to keep working on that college basketball model. Make more progress. Maybe I'll do a live stream of it this weekend. It's maybe Sunday. Update my progress. But until then, I don't know when the next video is going to be on this channel because, Thanksgiving, I don't want to do a live stream, when people are doing Thanksgiving and no one's around. So just stay tuned for more content. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody tuning in. I really do. In case you're wondering when the college football picks were there at the beginning of the video. All right, guys, until next time, this is Sports.